Africa's hopes for vaccine self-reliance might be dashed. It seems that the German vaccine firm BioNTech is revising its plans to build vaccine plants in Africa. BioNTech is Pfizer's partner in developing COVID-19 vaccines. For more on this, I'm joined by Dr. Mmboneni Muofhe, Deputy Director General responsible for Sociology, Economic Innovation and Partnership in the Department of Science and Innovation. Dr. Mmboneni, appreciate your time. Now, in the story, BioNTech is revising its plans for vaccine manufacturing facilities in Africa. Could you provide some insights into the reasons behind BioNTech's decision to abandon its plans for a manufacturing facility in South Africa?
Yeah, thanks very much for the opportunity, and I want to say greetings as well to the viewers of Channel 405. I think what is important to note is that South Africa didn't have any plans with BioNTech for them to manufacture or to put manufacturing facilities in South Africa. What we have, as you might have been aware, is that South Africa has been identified as the hub for mRNA technology transfer, which is about doing the same thing that you mentioned, which is building capacity for vaccine manufacturing, not only in Africa, but also in other developing countries. So that work is going on. As for BioNTech, there was no commitment whatsoever that I'm aware of, and if I'm not aware of, then it wasn't there. So we acknowledge and know that there have been some announcements that have been made in countries such as Rwanda and Senegal, but no such announcement have been made in South Africa. You might recall that also earlier in the year, there was an agreement, I think it was last year even, that was signed between our company BioNTech and Pfizer. Yes, Pfizer does use BioNTech technology for its COVID vaccine, but we don't have any commitment, or we never had any agreement for BioNTech to be involved in South Africa. So as to how their withdrawal or the delays that they are experiencing may actually affect what is happening in other countries where they had initially indicated that they were going to do some manufacturing capacity building, I don't know how that's going to happen, because we are not privy to the details of what was going to be done both in Rwanda and in Senegal. But what is happening in South Africa is that we are hosting the mRNA Technology Transfer Hub, and we have already trained at this point at least 12 other countries from the developing world. We've got countries from South America, Asia, in Africa, and we are in line to also add 2 that will be coming from Europe. So that program is on and going, and there's no issues with it.
Well, Dr. Mmboneni, we are aware, and in a report in News 24, they confirmed that just over a year after, in fact, they broke ground in their first facility in Rwanda around a year ago, and seem to be backtracking on this. So obviously some work had been done. I'd imagine from your response in that you would not have an answer as to why they might be pulling out or changing their minds.
So I wouldn't have an answer in those countries that have been mentioned. But in South Africa, as I said, there was no such commitment from them. Now, what I know, though, is that in terms of vaccine manufacturing, what you require is not just a shifting of containers from one country to another. You need to identify an ecosystem of institutions that are going to be involved in vaccine manufacturing. And this is the one thing that, even as we're hosting the mRNA Technology Transfer Hub in South Africa, has been the core. It has been the reason why actually South Africa was identified, because we've got that ecosystem. Whether you look at higher education institutions that conduct research, you look at the presence of companies like BioNTech, entities like the Medical Research Council and the CSIR. So those form an ecosystem. Afrigen, also one of the companies, they form an ecosystem that anchors anything that you want to do around vaccine manufacturing, including the regulatory aspect that in our case is done by our South African organization that regulate all the medications and drugs. So if you don't have that system, any other thing you do will probably also suffer. And I'm not sure to what extent that level of background was actually conducted where BioNTech was going to initiate those particular programs. So of course, from what we no. When you look at the program on mRNA technology transfer hub, we are, of course, training other African countries, and as I indicated, a whole range of countries from Asia and South America. So that program will also mean that we are not necessarily going to be in a dire situation as it might have been portrayed in that particular article, because you might be aware that already in South Africa there are candidate COVID vaccines, and there's a candidate COVID vaccine that is at preclinical stage that has been developed locally and on the basis of which the training of other countries have been made. So we can say that insofar as that program is concerned, we don't see, yes, there will be challenges, but we cannot say that those hopes have been dashed. So insofar as maybe what BioNTech wanted to do, yes, there could have been challenges, and we don't know to what extent those challenges are because we don't have the information about how they had planned to conduct their businesses in both Rwanda and in Senegal.
So let's shift our attention to BioNTech and them conducting clinical trials on an mRNA-based tuberculosis shot in South Africa. Can you share more information about the progress of these clinical trials and their significance in the context of healthcare in Africa?
So I'm going to speak in general because I'm not privy to the details of this particular clinical trial. The issue of clinical trials happening in a developing country like ours is quite crucial because when you develop vaccines, you want to have had those vaccines tried and tested in areas where they are going to be most relevant. So if you're talking about any TB clinical trial, for us, if South Africa is involved, it's a big bonus because that means that you are able then to test the efficacy of that particular vaccine on the subjects that are likely going to be the ones that are going to need it. And this is important because you want a vaccine that will be able to speak to the relevant genetic makeup of the population that you're dealing with. So if there is such happening, obviously they would have gone to get SAPRA approval to do those. And as I said, I'm not aware of those happening. Maybe they're happening and I wasn't aware, so that's fine. But if they are happening and they are looking at a tuberculosis vaccine, that really for us is a plus because you would want clinical trials to be done and prove efficient in your area or in the area of interest.
Dr. Mmboneni Muofhe, Deputy Director General responsible for Sociology, Economic Innovation and Partnership in the Department of Science and Innovation. Thanks for your time this afternoon.